My name is Rachel Adams. The day my marriage ended, it didn't start with a fight between my husband and me. It started at 7 in the morning, with the silence of our Denver apartment being shattered by a voice that carried the sharpness of a blade. My mother-in-law, Helen, leaned over my bed and shrieked as if the world was on fire. 7 o'clock and you're still asleep. Get up and make me breakfast right now. I had gone to bed at 4 a.m. after finishing a marathon of projects for my clients. My job as a digital consultant demanded long hours, and though it left me exhausted, it also paid 3 times more than what my husband, Mark, earned at his office job. But to Helen, none of that mattered. In her eyes, I was lazy, unworthy, a wife who refused to perform the real duties of a woman: cooking, cleaning, and serving. For the past 3 weeks, Helen and Frank, Mark's parents, had been living in our 2-bedroom apartment. What was supposed to be a short visit had stretched into an endless occupation. Their presence had turned our home into a prison. Helen refused to acknowledge my career as legitimate because it didn't require leaving the house. She dismissed it as playing on the computer. Frank, her husband, wasn't much different. He cared only for heavy, greasy meals. My lighter, healthier dishes were not real food. "What kind of wife serves rabbit food?" he'd mutter, pushing his plate away. Every day since their arrival, I had tried to endure. I told myself that losing my temper would only make things worse. But 3 weeks had worn me thin. Now, standing over my bed, Helen tapped her foot, her eyes flashing with indignation. "The apartment is a mess, and Mark will be home for lunch. His shirts aren't even ironed. What have you been doing all this time?" I sat up slowly, my head heavy from lack of sleep, and swallowed back the fury that rose in my chest. The truth was I wanted to scream, to throw her out of my room. But I didn't. Not yet. Helen stormed out, beginning a loud parade through the apartment, slamming doors and muttering about dust. From the kitchen, Frank's voice boomed. "Where's breakfast? A man can't live on coffee and salads." The final thread of my patience snapped. I walked into the living room, my voice sharp and steady. "Enough," I said. "You have 30 minutes to pack your things and leave my home." The room fell still. Helen blinked, stunned. Then her eyes narrowed. "You're home? Don't flatter yourself, Rachel. This is Mark's apartment. You don't get to throw me out of my son's place. You are nothing here." "Exactly," Frank grunted from the kitchen. "Don't forget whose name is on the family. You'd be nowhere without him." The fury in my chest turned hot. "This apartment was bought with our joint savings," I said, my voice low but unshakable. "Your son couldn't have afforded it alone. You didn't give a single dollar, so don't stand here and act like I'm living in some gift you handed down. All you think about is money." Helen's face flushed red. "You're ungrateful, selfish." I cut her off. "I think about fairness. And I'm telling you both. You're guests here, nothing more. I will not live another day under your insults." Without another word, I grabbed my laptop bag and walked out, the door shutting behind me with a firm thud that felt like a small act of liberation. I found refuge in a corner booth of my favorite cafe downtown. For a half hour, I managed to focus on work, but then my phone began to buzz relentlessly. It was a stream of messages from Helen on Facebook Messenger, each more vicious than the last. "Lazy. Worthless. A disgrace." One line made my skin crawl. "You'll regret the day you crossed me. Maybe sooner than you think." I stared at the words, a cold disgust washing over me. My hands trembled, but my mind was working. I took screenshots of every single message, saved them to a folder, and then blocked her number, without hesitation. I sat back, the exhaustion seeping deep into my bones. I had worked until 4 in the morning, been jolted awake by screams, and now endured a barrage of written abuse. It was then I knew this couldn't continue. I sent a message to Mark, attaching the screenshots. "I'm at the cafe downtown. We need to talk. Come here tonight." At 6 o'clock sharp, Mark walked in, his expression already stormy. "What did you and Mom fight about this time?" he asked, his tone accusatory, as if I were the problem. "Mark," I said, my voice calm but resolute, "this isn't just another fight. I want your parents to leave. Tonight. I can't live like this anymore." He leaned back, crossing his arms. "Rachel, you're exaggerating. Mom's blood pressure has been all over the place. Dad's stressed. They don't mean everything they say. Do you want me to just abandon them? His words confirmed my deepest fear. He wasn't just failing to defend me, he was taking their side. I'm not asking you to abandon them, I said carefully. I'm asking you to draw a boundary. They've insulted me, invaded our home, and you've done nothing. Rent them their own place. Visit as much as you want, but they can't stay with us. His eyes hardened. This is my home, too. You don't get to dictate who I let through that door. The final thread inside me snapped. Then listen to me carefully. If they don't leave, I will. And if I leave, Mark, I won't be coming back. I will file for divorce. His mouth opened, then closed. You're making me choose between my family and my wife? No, I said, holding his gaze. I'm asking you to respect me enough to not force me into a hostile environment every day. I'm asking you to make me feel safe in my own home. If you can't give me that, then what exactly do I have left in this marriage? His silence told me everything. He wasn't considering my words. He was calculating how to push me back into submission. I stood up, my voice calm but final. Think about what I said. Either they leave or I do. But if I walk out, it's for good. I left him sitting there and walked out into the cool Denver night. The marriage was over. Mark didn't want a partner. He wanted obedience. And Rachel Adams was done bowing. The divorce was finalized quickly, but the apartment became a battleground that stretched for months. The court ruled it was marital property, to be split evenly. I moved into a small studio across town, but I refused to surrender my 50% ownership of the condo. Mark stayed, and at first he paid his share of the mortgage. But as weeks turned into months, his discipline faltered. Bills piled up. I kept up with my half, but I watched as he began slipping behind. The warning letters from the bank grew more urgent. Mark had stopped making his payments entirely. The late fees mounted, and eventually, the inevitable happened. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings. I received the notice with a sinking feeling, but I didn't panic. I scheduled a meeting with the bank's representatives. I walked in with a folder of documents, proof of my consistent payments, records of my income, and the correspondence showing Mark's neglect. I want to resolve this, I told a loan officer, my voice firm. I'm prepared to cover the arrears, bring the loan current, and assume full responsibility myself. But I'll need full ownership. Let me take this off your books cleanly. The negotiation was tense but short. The bank didn't want a costly foreclosure. My offer was the simplest solution. I agreed to pay the outstanding balance and restructure the mortgage under my name alone. Mark's 50% share, devalued by his delinquency, was effectively bought out for far less than the property's actual worth. When Mark found out, he exploded. He sued, claiming I had maneuvered behind his back, but the court dismissed his complaint. Everything I had done was legal and documented. Helen and Frank showed up at the building, shouting in the lobby about how their family home had been stolen. But they had no legal standing. I stood in the apartment soon after, a new set of keys warm in my hand. The rooms were quiet. The place that had been a battleground was now mine alone. The apartment no longer carried the power of those painful memories. It carried the weight of my victory. I had reclaimed more than just a property. I had reclaimed my independence, my peace, and my future. In the months that followed, I poured myself into my work. Without the daily chaos, my focus sharpened and my business flourished. The studio apartment remained my refuge, but I often returned to the condo, savoring the silence. My spirit began to heal. It was during the season of renewal that I met Daniel Cooper at a networking event. He was a project manager, confident but not arrogant. He listened. He respected my boundaries. When I spoke about my past, he didn't minimize it. He simply acknowledged it. Slowly, I allowed myself to trust again. Eventually, we decided to live together. The irony wasn't lost on me when Daniel suggested moving into my condo, the very place that had once symbolized so much pain. But as I stood in those rooms beside him, I realized the apartment had transformed. It wasn't haunted anymore. It was ready to become a home. We moved in one crisp autumn weekend, our laughter echoing down the hallway as we argued playfully over where to put the bookshelves. That night, we sat on the couch surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. The divorce hadn't been a failure. It had been the doorway to freedom. The condo was no longer a battlefield. It was the foundation of a new beginning. As evening settled over Denver, I leaned back against Daniel, my eyes tracing the city lights. The apartment was filled not with shouting or judgment, but with a gentle hum of possibility. And in that stillness, I knew the truth. I hadn't lost a marriage. I had gained myself. And in doing so, I had found a love worthy of the woman I had become.